Welcome to the deep dive. We're jumping straight into quite a dense collection of source material today. It all revolves around leadership, influence, and, well, how to find genuine long-term success in this, incredibly fast-paced digital economy. Our mission here is to really dig into a crucial, maybe counterintuitive idea that's right at the heart of these documents. What if the biggest threat to your influence, the thing that holds you back long term, isn't the competition or funding or branding? What if it's actually pride, that quiet internal pull?
That's exactly the paradox these sources are getting at. I mean, we live in an age where building a following, scaling a business, it seems easier than ever, right? The tools are there, yet you see millions of leaders pushing so hard to be seen, chasing those metrics, chasing revenue, and then they just collapse internally. They end up, as the materials put it, spiritually poor, creatively drained, or disconnected. And the kicker is, it often happens because they found that surface level success, but without the right foundation.
Okay, so we're definitely not talking about humility as just like a nice to have virtue, something soft. We're reframing it. The sources argue pretty forcefully that humility isn't soft at all. It's a strategic, measurable advantage. So we're exploring how leaders can intentionally lead low so they can rise high. It's a concept the sources call the dependence advantage.
Yeah, and we have to start there because the crisis in modern leadership is really about sustainability.
Yeah.
Look, the digital economy is ruthless in rewarding competence, rewarding skill. You can use tech to build huge influence, launch a platform almost overnight. It's possible. But if the character piece, that inner architecture, isn't anchored in humility, the whole thing is just incredibly fragile. It becomes volatile, dangerously dependent on constant performance, constant applause.
It sounds like the siren song of the world, as one source calls it. We hear it all the time, this cult of independence, be your own boss, the celebration of the self-made myth. It's almost heroic, right? Like you shouldn't need anyone.
And that myth, the self-made one, it's actually deeply destructive. It fosters this isolating kind of pride. It makes leaders feel they have to take all the credit, which denies the reality of interdependence. And that pushes you straight into what the sources call the performance trap. You feel like you constantly have to project this image of unwavering competence. Never admit a mistake, never show weakness, definitely don't ask for help.
Okay, but hold on. Isn't confidence crucial? Like if you're pitching VCs or trying to attract top talent, if I walk into a meeting and say, I need some help figuring out market growth, doesn't that just tank my authority right there? Isn't vulnerability sometimes a liability?
That's the tension, right? If you equate confidence with infallibility, then yeah, admitting weakness looks bad.
Yeah.
But the sources argue the real liability is that performance trap itself, that constant need to perform perfectly. It stifles real connection.
Yeah.
It paralyzes innovation because you're terrified of failure, and it pretty much guarantees burnout and isolation down the line. That old model of leadership, the one built on sort of unchecked pride, it might scale fast, but it just doesn't have the structural integrity to last.
Oh, okay. I see the link now. When you're trying to stand out in a crowded market or keep an audience that's always looking for the next new thing, or just grow sustainably without ditching your values, that structure built on just one person's supposed competence, it just crumbles under pressure.
Precisely. It's unsustainable. It demands perfect output from one source, you, all the time.
Okay, let's unpack this definition of humility then. We need to get past the idea that it's just, being timid or having low self-esteem. The sources are clear. It's a potent strategic edge. So what does strategic humility actually look like? What's its anatomy?
All right, the core definition is key here. Humility isn't thinking less of yourself, it's thinking of yourself less. It's really a mechanism for accurate self-assessment. It gives you strength and wisdom because it clears away the ego and lets you see reality more clearly.
So it shifts you away from self-absorption, like obsessing over your follower count, towards genuine self-awareness, knowing your real strengths, but also your real limits.
Exactly. Strategic humility demands being teachable, being genuinely open to feedback. It means recognizing that your skills are maybe gifts or things you've developed, not things you inherently own in isolation. And the advantages, they argue, are measurable, especially clarity. Pride distorts reality, right? Makes us believe our own hype, ignore bad news. Humility sharpens clarity, lets a leader see the market, the team, their own blind spots more accurately. This stabilizes leadership, preserves creativity long term, and crucially, it builds trust. And trust is something algorithms can't fake and ad budgets can't just buy.
That makes sense, I think, in a business context. But here's where the source material really angers the whole thing. It argues the ultimate blueprint for existence isn't autonomy, it's dependence. And it grounds this really deep in a biblical counter-narrative.
Yes, exactly. This is where we see that theological idea translated into a leadership principle. The sources point to the incarnation, Christ emptying himself, taking the form of a servant, like in Philippians 2. That act, sometimes called kenosis, it's essentially a voluntary letting go of power or status for the greater good, choosing to set aside rank.
And his whole life was lived in dependence,
Right.
right? Saying things like, I can do nothing on my own.
That's the radical insight for a leader. Dependence isn't failure, it's not a limitation. If the ultimate model for how things work involves dependence, then maybe dependence is actually the source of true, lasting power. It totally flips how we think about influence. Maybe it's not something you grab, but something you receive through connection. That's the core of this dependence advantage.
Okay, let's bring this down from principle to practice. Like on the office floor, how does adopting this posture, this humility, actually unlock influence in tangible ways?
Well, the first practical outcome is vulnerability, which we touched on. In a culture screaming for leaders to be invincible, vulnerability is deliberately showing your humanity, your imperfections. The sources say this isn't just nice. It creates real psychological safety in a team or community. And that speeds up decision-making, surprisingly.
Okay, give me the business case for that, though. If a leader admits, yeah, I messed up on that integration last quarter, how does that speed up the next project?
Because it dramatically lowers the cost of failure for everyone else. If the leader can say, I don't know, or I failed here, what did we learn? It signals to the whole team that it's safe to ask for help, safe to admit mistakes. Paradoxically, that enhances their authority because it shows reliance on collective wisdom, not just personal genius. When teams feel safe, they report problems faster, they collaborate more honestly, they innovate without that fear of getting blamed if it doesn't work out.
Which leads straight into collaboration, right? The power of we. Pride puts you in that Lone Ranger spot.
And humility unites. Look at the complexity of modern challenges, supply chains, market shifts, whatever. They demand diverse, connected perspectives. You can't know it all. The sources use metaphors like the body of Christ, but also historical examples like Moses taking Jethro's advice in Exodus. Remember, Jethro saw Moses burning himself out, trying to judge every single dispute alone. Humble leaders actually structure things differently. They flatten hierarchies where possible. They leverage interdependence strategically. They distribute decision-making.
Okay, and this brings us to maybe the trickiest word here, submission. In leadership, that sounds like just giving up control.
It definitely needs reframing. Yeah. This isn't about passive weakness. It's presented as a conscious, strategic choice rooted in wisdom and trust. Yes, it means yielding to legitimate authority, but practically, day to day, it often means deferring to the expertise on your team. The humble leader prioritizes consensus, listens to domain experts, and yields to their judgment sometimes, even if they have the top title. That submission to data or to the expert unlocks better results.
Right. We need to see how this holds up under pressure. Those moments where leaders feel the most heat. Let's spend some time on, say, crisis management, innovation, and maybe that really subtle one, rests.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Crisis hits, big product flaw, financial trouble, PR nightmare. The difference between pride and humility is just stark. The quietful leader, denial, blame shifting, isolating themselves to control the story, and that almost always makes things worse, loses trust fast.
And the humble leader.
They face reality. Acknowledge it honestly, quickly. They pull people in, seeking counsel, gathering experts, even critics. And crucially, they'll publicly ask for help or forgiveness if needed. That posture actually leads to more stability, faster recovery. It builds deeper loyalty because that transparency, especially when things are tough, signals authenticity. It stabilizes the whole situation.
Let's pivot to innovation. Pride can be a real killer there, financially speaking. That whole not invented here syndrome.
Perfect example. Pride builds resistance to change. Why? Because adapting means admitting your current way isn't perfect or it's incomplete. It locks leaders into the status quo, creates this fear of failure. If your first idea has to be perfect, you'll never launch anything. Humility, though, is like fuel for innovation. It fosters curiosity, what they call a beginner's mind, and the willingness to pivot, even kill a project you champion. That ability to adapt without ego blocking the way, that's often the difference between surviving disruption and getting crushed by it.
And finally, let's touch on that really subtle, very modern form of pride. Constant busyness. The inability to actually rest.
Yeah, the sources identify this failure to rest, to observe a Sabbath even, as a deep, subtle pride. It's like believing you're indispensable. It's an addiction to performance that whispers, if I stop, everything falls apart, or maybe my worth is purely based on my output.
So choosing to rest isn't just a wellness tip. It's a strategic, humble choice.
It's framed as a profound act of dependence. When you truly rest, you're declaring, okay, I'm not God. I'm not indispensable. You're acknowledging that the world is held together by something bigger than your own effort. That shifts you from anxiety-driven workaholism to trust-based discipline. And that preserves the very energy and clarity you need for the long haul. Without it, burnout isn't just possible, it's pretty much guaranteed. So to kind of pull this all together for you listening, this relentless chase to be ultra-rich, whether it's followers, revenue, reach, whatever the metric, it often leaves leaders really impoverished in the things that actually sustain you. Real impact, trust, clarity, purpose. True, lasting success seems to be defined more by the depth of your foundation than the height of your profile.
Yeah, our whole deep dive today was really aiming to show that humility isn't just a character trait, it's the actual structural foundation for influence that lasts. It's what helps your platforms withstand pressure, helps communities thrive on trust, helps your work connect authentically. And it's not a one-off, it's a constant choice, moment by moment, to see your limits and value other strengths. Integrating this dependence advantage, it's a lifelong journey, isn't it? Not a quick fix, but a continuous process of learning, of growing in self-awareness.
Which leads to, I think, a really important, maybe provocative question for you to chew on as you go. If competence can build your platform faster than humility can deepen its roots, ask yourself this: what crucial opportunities might be slipping away right now? Opportunities you're missing because you're relying on a kind of strength that looks impressive short-term, but isn't actually effective or stable for the future. Maybe choosing dependence over independence is the key to making your influence truly endure.